Chapter 98. Gu Xingyin stayed at Xuanca's Lingyun Peak for a long time. Xuanca didn't allow her to leave until all her injuries were healed. She took the time to go to Lingxiao Peak and gave the Taisui fungus to her master. Venerable Lingxiao just shook his head. My swordsmanship has reached the extreme. My only chance of survival is to make another breakthrough. Otherwise, I'll just struggle at death's door for a few hundred years. Gu Xingyin felt bitter in her heart. She smiled. With master's attainments in swordsmanship, you'll definitely make a breakthrough. Venerable Lingxiao looked at his only disciple with a gentle gaze. The only thing I'm worried about is you. However, I've already asked your senior brother to take care of you. He'll take good care of you. His words indicated that he was prepared for the worst. Gu Xingyin had been depressed since she returned from Lingxiao Peak. Xuanca knew that she was worried about martial uncle. Life and death are up to fate. Martial uncle has already accepted it. Junior sister, why do you have to be so stubborn? A swordsman must have the determination to face everything head-on. Gu Xingyin understood this logic. Although she could accept it rationally, she couldn't get used to it so quickly emotionally. After all, ever since she came to this world, Ling Xiao was her master and family. He had accompanied and taught her for 10 years. Xuanca also knew that other than his junior sister herself, no one else could do anything. Xuanca suggested that Gu Xingyin start teaching in the Stellar Sword sect. With her identity as a sword emperor, it was more than enough to teach ordinary swordsman disciples. Xuanca just wanted Gu Xingyin to find something to distract her. Since he mentioned it to the Star River sect master, it was naturally impossible for him to refuse. When Bai Xinya returned to her small courtyard, she happened to hear a few outer disciples who lived in the same courtyard talking. I heard that she's a sword emperor. In terms of seniority, she's our great-grandmaster. When the female disciples saw Bai Xinya enter, they all stopped talking and did not say anything else. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Bai Xinya felt extremely wronged in the face of undisguised isolation. Her heart ached, and tears welled up in her eyes. Oh, don't you cry. One of the female disciples with a fiery temper said directly, if those inner sect senior brothers see this, they will definitely think that we bullied you again. This crime is not something that we, as mere outer sect disciples, can bear. Bai Xinya choked and held back the tears that were about to flow out of her eyes. Seeing that none of them had the intention to talk to her, she could only silently walk back to her room. Bah! Who are you pretending to be weak all day long? The woman who spoke earlier said disdainfully. Another female disciple said, don't those senior brothers like this type? They complained to each other. There were very few female swordsmen in the first place. Those who chose to become swordsmen were all determined people. Naturally, they didn't like Bai Xinya's tearful attitude. Moreover, they didn't treat Bai Xinya like this in the beginning. But later, they slowly realized that as long as they talked about something in the courtyard, the entire outer sect would know about it within a day. Later, when they found out that it was Bai Xinya's doing, they couldn't help but feel disgusted. When they found Bai Xinya, she was still looking at them with pure and innocent eyes. There's nothing that can't be told. Senior sisters, you didn't talk about anything bad. Their courtyard had become the joke of the outer sect. Chapter 99. Starnet Sword Sect's Sword Discourse Hall. Zhao Ximing woke up very early today, because he had heard the news a few days ago that a grandmaster would be teaching the disciples in the Sword Discourse Hall. Perhaps those who had taken an elder as their master wouldn't care about the teachings of a sword emperor. But for these inner sect disciples who hadn't taken a master yet, it was a rare opportunity. Not to mention those outer sect disciples with ordinary aptitude. However, although he had arrived early, when he arrived at the Sword Discourse Hall, he found that the best seats had already been occupied. It turned out that there were even more people who had arrived earlier than him. Zhao Ximing saw Bai Xinya in the crowd with a glance. Her seat was extremely close to the front. It was impossible for a mere outer sect disciple like her to occupy such a seat. Zhao Ximing's eyes swept to the side, and as expected, he saw a male disciple dressed in inner sect disciple attire sitting beside Bai Xinya. Zhao Ximing recognized this person. He was among the inner sect disciples this year, a genius with an 8th level sword heart. The two of them were intimate, and their relationship could be seen at a glance. Zhao Ximing smiled coldly. Since that day in the wilderness when he was reminded by that unknown senior, he began to secretly observe Bai Xinya. The more he knew, the colder his heart became. He also deeply felt that he was simply blind to be so devoted to Bai Xinya before. That woman was clearly dragging him along, while maintaining an intimate relationship with him. She even maintained an ambiguous relationship with several inner and outer sect disciples at the same time. He even saw an outer sect disciple who had been abandoned by Bai Xinya. After Bai Xinya realized that he was of no use to her, Bai Xinya's face immediately changed. That outer sect disciple was unwilling to give up, and continued to pester her. He was directly beaten half to death by Bai Xinya's pursuers. During the entire process, Bai Xinya only hid behind others, pretending that she couldn't bear to see blood. She didn't open her mouth to plead for that outer sect disciple. This kind of woman wasn't weak and pitiful at all. She was clearly selfish and cold to the extreme. After that, Zhao Ximing distanced himself from Bai Xinya. If he continued to be with her, he wouldn't even know how he died one day. Zhao Ximing came back to his senses, and found that all the seats in the Sword Discourse Hall had been taken. There were even many people who stood outside the door because they had no seats. "She's here," he heard someone say. Zhao Ximing subconsciously looked up as if a cold fragrance had brushed past his body. He was stunned. It's actually her? Zhao Ximing recognized at a glance that the white-robed woman sitting at the head of the table was the senior who had saved his life in the wilderness that day. No one would forget a person like Gu Xingyin after a single glance. So, she was actually his great ancestor. Bai Xinya also recognized Gu Xingyin. Unlike Zhao Ximing's mixed feelings, when she saw Gu Xingyin, her heart was full of uneasiness and fear. This woman was actually her great ancestor? She felt uneasy in her heart. She had met her twice before. The first time, this great ancestor master had clearly expressed her dislike for her. The second time, she was standing with the people who had besieged her. Although it could be said that one who didn't know was not guilty, if this great ancestor were to label her as disrespectful to the elders of the sect, she, Bai Xinya, could only admit defeat. Gu Xingyin naturally also saw Bai Xinya. However, she only glanced at her briefly before moving her gaze away. As long as this woman didn't provoke her, Gu Xingyin, who only wanted to complete her mission, didn't have the extra effort to deal with her. Chapter 100. Bai Xinya saw that Gu Xingyin's eyes fell on her, and quickly moved away, as if she didn't know her. She breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this great ancestor didn't recognize her. But at the same time, a sense of unwillingness emerged from her heart. This great ancestor looked at her as if she were looking at ants. Isn't she just extremely talented and worshipped a good master? We're all human beings. Why does she look down on me? If Gu Xingyin could hear her heart, she would tell her, "Girl, you really think too much. Gu Weixin is like this. She doesn't have any extra feelings when she looks at anyone." What's more, everyone was looked at by Gu Xingyin, but only she, Gu Xingyin, thought that she looked down on him. There was a Buddha in her heart, and all she saw was Buddha. After all, Gu Xingyin was a sword emperor powerhouse. It was not difficult for her to teach a group of ordinary swordsmen. What's more, she had knowledge beyond this world in her mind. Her teaching style was different from the other elders of the Star Luo sword sect. She omitted those obscure chants and expressed her understanding of swordsmanship in a more simple and clear way. She even helped those swordsmen to answer their doubts. There was no doubt that her lectures were extremely popular among these disciples. The morning passed quickly. Gu Xingyin was about to get up and leave when she suddenly felt a familiar breath. Her expression changed and she walked out of the door. Sure enough, she saw Schwanke waiting on one side. "Senior brother, why are you here?" Seeing her lover, Gu Xingyin's face was obviously softer. At this time, the disciples of the sword discussion hall didn't leave. They admired this great ancestor, but they were also frozen by the cold air around her. At this moment, seeing that this cold great ancestor was no longer releasing cold air, they were curious about who she was and how she could have such ability. When they heard Gu Xingyin's address, they were all stunned. "Senior brother?" It was said that this martial ancestor had become the disciple of one of the two grand elders in the sect, the sword saint elder Ling Xiao. However, he had never heard of this grand elder having other disciples. Others, including the sect master, had to address Gu Xingyin as grandmaster in terms of seniority. Wait a minute. There was one more person. Lingyun Peak, which was next to Lingxiao Peak, also had a grand elder. For a moment, everyone looked at Xuanke with burning eyes. Bai Xinya was no exception. That was a sword saint. Bai Xinya's eyes flickered. If this sword saint expert could take a liking to her, who in the Star Azura sword sect, or even the Sky Billow Great World, would dare to look down on her? What's more, this grand elder was so good-looking. Bai Xinya secretly blushed. She suddenly stood up and walked towards Gu Xingyin and Xuanke. Xuanke was talking to his junior sister when he sensed someone approaching. He glanced at Bai Xinya, feeling slightly impatient. Who was this person? How could she be so unruly? Gu Xingyin also saw Bai Xinya. She was rather curious. What was this woman up to now? Bai Xinya walked gracefully in front of the two and bowed. Disciple Bai Xinya pays respect to the two seniors. Her voice carried a natural charm, and her watery eyes looked at Xuanke affectionately. At this moment, Gu Xingyin knew what she was thinking. She had actually set her sights on her lover. Gu Xingyin did not say anything, but waited to see how Xuanke would react. Xuanke frowned. He felt that Bai Xinya's gaze was very strange, and felt a little guilty. This kind of thing should not be seen by his junior sister. Chapter 101. He looked at Bai Xinya's expectant eyes. Seeing that his junior sister had no intention of speaking, he asked, "What's the matter?" The smile on Bai Xinya's face became even more charming. She said shyly, "This disciple admires senior's elegance, so I came to pay my respects to senior." In her experience, when a man saw a beautiful girl admiring him, he would definitely be very proud. This grand elder would definitely be interested in her. Bai Xinya couldn't help but smile. However, Xuanke's next words made her smile freeze on her face. "Which peak are you from? You don't know the rules." Xuanke frowned. "You interrupted the conversation between your master and your elders because of this reason. Who is your master?" Bai Xinya's face turned pale. She didn't expect things to develop like this. She still wanted to say something, but the pressure from Xuanke's body made it hard for her to breathe. She could only respectfully lower her head and say, "This disciple is an outer sect disciple. Currently, I don't have a master." Xuanke nodded. "So you're an outer sect disciple. You lack guidance and don't know etiquette. I don't blame you." His words made Bai Xinya feel so ashamed that she wanted to die. Did he mean that she didn't have a good upbringing? Because Gu Xingyin hadn't left yet, the disciples in the sword discourse hall didn't get up. At this moment, their gazes all fell on Bai Xinya. Bai Xinya's figure was on the verge of collapse. She felt that everyone was laughing at her. Xuanke looked at her and frowned. This kind of behavior, was she a sword cultivator? He glanced at Gu Xingyin, who had a calm expression. "Yes, junior sister is much better." He spread out his divine sense. Elder Xingshi, who was in charge of the outer sect, was drinking tea in his room. When he heard Xuanke's voice, he was so scared that he almost choked. "Come to the sword discourse hall quickly." He didn't have time to think about what had happened. Without saying a word, he put down the teacup in his hand and came to the sword discourse hall. "Greetings, Venerable Ling Yin." "Greetings, Junior Grand Uncle." Elder Xingshi bowed to the two of them. Although Gu Xingyin's cultivation level was not as high as his, in terms of seniority, she was his martial grandaunt. Not to mention, the 18-year-old sword emperor. Elder Xingshi clearly understood that it was only a matter of time before young martial granduncle became a sword venerable, or even a sword great master. In fact, it was extremely likely that he would enter the legendary realm. He was sincerely convinced by this salute. Xuanke said indifferently, "Are you in charge of the outer sect disciples? Although he's not your personal disciple, you should still teach him some etiquette and what he should and shouldn't do." Elder Xingshi was confused. He glanced at Bai Xinya, who was standing on the side. Although he didn't understand what had happened, he could guess that this disciple had angered the two people in front of him. No matter how he was going to deal with it, it was more important to apologize first. He hurriedly said, "It's my fault for being negligent in my management. Please forgive me, junior granduncle." Seeing enlightened Master Xingshir's attitude, Xuanke didn't say much. He pulled Gu Xingyin and left. Elder Xingshi respectfully watched the two of them leave. He looked at Bai Xingya, who was standing on the side with an aggrieved face. His face was as gloomy as water. "Come with me." He pointed at a few outer sect disciples and said, "You guys come with me. Tell me what happened." After the people involved left, the disciples who were still in the sword discourse hall burst into an uproar. They were discussing what had just happened. Zhao Ximing sneered and left. Chapter 102. Tell me what happened just now. Elder Xingshi looked at Bai Xingya with a solemn expression. Bai Xingya could not help but shudder when a sword venerable expert looked at her with such a gaze. She cowered and said, "I just admire the elegance of the two martial granduncles, and wanted to pay my respects." Elder Xingshi looked at the two disciples beside him and said, "You two, tell me the whole story. Don't leave out a single word." The two disciples did not dare to hide anything. Elder Xingshi waved his hand to let them leave. He looked at Bai Xingya. After being in charge of the outer sect for so many years, he had seen all kinds of people. The two martial granduncles, who were focused on cultivation and did not care about worldly affairs, might not be able to see through Bai Xingya's thoughts, but it could not be hidden from him. "I've lived for so many years and have seen many ambitious people, but it's the first time I've seen someone like you." His expression was gloomy. Sword cultivation focuses on the cultivation of the heart. You don't think about improving yourself, and your mind is actually filled with these crooked methods. How can you make any progress on the path of the sword? You should be glad that martial granduncles do not intend to pursue this matter. Otherwise, no one will be able to protect you. Go to Reflection Peak and stay there. Come down when you're in a good mood. Bai Xingya immediately became exhausted. Reflection Peak, as the name suggested, was a place where the disciples of the Stellar Sword sect who had made mistakes reflected on their mistakes. It was bone-chilling and desolate all year round. How could one live such a life? However, no one in the outer sect could change Elder Xingshir's decision. Gu Xingyin had already returned to Lingyun Peak with Xuanke. Ever since she was injured, she had been staying at Lingyun Peak where Xuanke was at. Now that her injuries were mostly healed, neither of them had the intention to let Gu Xingyin return to Lingxiao Peak. However, Venerable Lingxiao was in seclusion, so it was better not to disturb him. "Junior sister, why do you keep looking at me?" Xuanke was a little puzzled. Ever since the two of them left the sword discourse hall, his junior sister had been looking at him with a strange expression. Gu Xingyin suddenly had a mischievous thought. "I see that senior brother's face is like jade. Your figure is like an orchid, and you are as graceful as an immortal. You can't blame that female disciple for having thoughts about you." Xuanke had never been tormented or teased by anyone before, so he actually blushed for a moment. "Junior martial sister, don't talk nonsense." The system was also looking at Gu Xingyin curiously. It seemed that with the completion of one mission after another, the host's personality seemed to have become more lively. Gu Xingyin suddenly smiled. Xuanke looked up and saw this smile. He always knew that his junior sister was beautiful, but he never thought that his junior sister's smile would be so beautiful. It was as if a beam of light had suddenly broken through the darkness, stunning and dazzling. He inexplicably felt that his heart was beating a little faster when he saw this smile. "Senior brother, you're so handsome. It's normal for girls to admire you. Senior brother, don't be shy." Xuanke didn't answer Gu Xingyin. He looked at his junior sister's smiling face and suddenly asked an inexplicable question. "The junior sister's color is better than that of senior brother, and there will be many people who admire junior sister?" Gu Xingyin is stuck for a while. Gu Weixin's appearance is really beautiful, but it's too high to reach. There must be people who admire her, but no one dares to say it. Xuanke took her silence as acquiescence. For a moment he was so upset that he blurted out, "Sword is important. Junior sister is still young. Don't be distracted by this kind of thing." Chapter 103. After that, Gu Xingyin regularly lectured on the way of the sword at the Sword Discourse Hall every few days. The news outside also gradually spread. Not long ago, the Ice Heart Sword Emperor, who made a name for herself in the Tianlan continent, was actually the martial grandmaster, who lectured on the way of the sword for them. Gu Xingyin very clearly felt that the number of disciples coming to the Sword Discourse Hall had increased recently. Moreover, those disciples all looked at her with an expression of worship. For some reason, Xuanke would come to the Sword Discourse Hall every day after she finished lecturing on the way of the sword to bring her back to Lingyun Peak. Until one day, the system suddenly sent a message to Gu Xingyin. Bai Xinya and Shi Lufeng actually appeared together in the Phoenix Perching Valley in the southern region of the Tianlan Great World. Gu Xingyin, who knew the original plot, naturally knew that this Phoenix Perching Valley was clearly an active volcano. This was where Bai Xinya was poisoned by the fire poison. Bai Xinya was currently reflecting on her mistakes at Reflection Peak. How did she run to Phoenix Perching Valley? Before Gu Xingyin could ask, she received the system's order. You want me to go to Phoenix Perching Valley and stop Bai Xinya from obtaining the fiery eye-flowing serum? Gu Xingyin asked. To be honest, ever since Gu Xingyin started accepting missions, the system almost never asked her to carry out any missions. Suddenly giving such an order made her feel a little curious. The system didn't know the twists and turns in Gu Xingyin's mind. It said methodically, the fiery eye-flowing serum's effect is to cleanse the marrow and temper the heart of the sword. Bai Xinya's goal is to use the fiery eye-flowing serum to raise her aptitude. The system has detected that Bai Xinya's malice towards the host is 70%. Current status towards the host, hostile. It's very likely that she will pose a threat to the host. The system has the responsibility to eliminate dangerous factors for the host. Therefore, the host must stop Bai Xinya from obtaining the fiery eye-flowing serum. Gu Xingyin nodded and suddenly asked, I don't think I have offended Bai Xinya. Why does she hate me? The system said, analyzing. Analysis failed. The human heart is too complicated. The system cannot analyze Bai Xinya's psychological changes. Gu Xingyin. Listening to the system's serious answer, I suddenly feel like laughing. Since there was a mission, Gu Xingyin naturally had to complete it. She went to Xuanke's residence and told him the purpose of her visit. You want to go to the Phoenix Perching Valley? Xuanke frowned. It's hot there all year round and not a single blade of grass grows there. What's there to see? I've had some enlightenment during this period of time, and I'm about to go into seclusion for a period of time. Why don't I go with you in a few days? Gu Xingyin thought to herself. By the time you come out of seclusion, the fiery eye-flowing serum would already be in Bai Xinya's hands. She shook her head. Senior brother, I'm just bored and want to go out for a walk. Don't worry, I promise I won't go out and cause trouble this time. I'm a sword cultivator at the Sword Emperor realm after all. I have the ability to protect myself. Xuanke had no choice but to say, then you have to be safe. If there's anything, you must contact me immediately. Gu Xingyin nodded. She was about to leave when Xuanke suddenly called out to her. Seeing his junior sister looking at him with some doubt, Xuanke only felt his face heat up slightly. Junior sister, you're inexperienced in the world. Don't be deceived by others outside. Especially when I heard that many men will use flowery words to coax beautiful women. Gu Xingyin heard this, and could not maintain her facial expression for a moment. She burst out laughing. I know, senior brother. Don't worry, I won't even look at those who aren't as good-looking as you. Chapter 104. Hot. This was the only feeling Gu Xingyin had when she stood in this Phoenix Perching Valley. As the Sword Emperor, she should be immune to both heat and cold. But in this place, she still felt the shocking heat. No wonder it was a place that could give birth to a treasure like the fiery eye liquid. The volcanoes in Cheng Shiji's world that she had experienced before couldn't be compared to this at all. The system only gave her the task of stopping Bai Xinya from getting the fiery eye liquid. As for how to do it, there were no requirements. Actually, Gu Xingyin had the simplest way to eliminate Bai Xinya's threat to her. Kill her. But she didn't think of doing so. Firstly, Bai Xinya had that White Lotus halo. According to the system, it had the effect of increasing luck. It was hard to say whether it could take her life. Secondly, Gu Xingyin herself wasn't willing to do so. She was a created human, and had always cherished life. If Bai Xingya didn't really do anything to her, she couldn't indulge herself to kill someone who only had evil intentions towards her. At this time, Bai Xingya was still on the way to the Phoenix Perching Valley with Shi Lufeng. Although the Phoenix Perching Valley could give birth to the legendary fiery eye liquid, the chance of it being born was really too small. It might not even appear once in 1,000 years. So usually, other than some people who occasionally came here to try their luck, not many people would keep watch here. When Gu Xingyin arrived, there were only 2 people here. One was unexpectedly an acquaintance. It was Zhao Ximing, an inner disciple of the Star-Gathering Sword sect whose life she had once saved. Great-Grand Martial Uncle. Zhao Ximing was clearly very happy to see Gu Xingyin. He glanced at Gu Xingyin and suddenly said in a low voice, "Great-Grand Martial Uncle, please come with me." Gu Xingyin followed him to one side. Only then did Zhao Ximing look at her. "Martial Grandaunt, it would be best for you to conceal your appearance. After all, you are now a rather famous person in the Great Sky Billow world. It would be very easy for people to connect you to your identity. This time, I have received definite news. On the 15th of this month, when the moon is at its fullest, there will be fire eye oozing magma appearing in the Phoenix Perching Valley. In order to avoid being targeted, it is better for Martial Granduncle to conceal it." He looked at Gu Xingyin with a sincere gaze. Gu Xingyin was surprised. "Such important news, you actually told me. Are you not afraid that I have other thoughts?" Zhao Ximing smiled wryly. "With your 10th order sword heart, what's the use of this fire eye liquid? Moreover," he looked seriously at Gu Xingyin. "This disciple believes that Martial Granduncle is definitely not that kind of person." Gu Xingyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She felt that she had met an admirer. However, she glanced at Zhao Ximing. She found this person pleasing to the eye. If she obtained the fire eye liquid, it wouldn't be bad to give him a favor. Since Zhao Ximing was so sure that the fire eye liquid would appear, presumably Bai Xingya and the others had also received the same news. In the next few days, Gu Xingyin and Zhao Ximing quietly waited for the arrival of the 15th. Occasionally, they would send a message to Xuanke, indicating that they were all well. Soon Bai Xingya and Shi Lufeng arrived. Gu Xingyin glanced at them. Shi Lufeng, as the young master of the Shitian Pavilion, definitely wouldn't come alone. A sword emperor and a sword venerable. It seemed that Shi Lufeng was indeed favored. She didn't feel that after her identity was exposed, the people of the Shitian Pavilion would still dare to make a move against her. Unless, they could bear the anger of the 2 sword saints of the Star-Scattered Sword sect. Chapter 105. Bai Xingya also saw Zhao Ximing. She was a little uneasy, afraid that Zhao Ximing would come to her. Since catching up with Shi Lufeng, she has been alienated from Zhao Ximing and others. Of course, she doesn't think it's because Shi Liufeng's temper is too overbearing, but she feels that she has found true love. In fact, she thinks too much. Zhao Ximing doesn't mean to pay attention to her at all. Instead, Bai Xingya looks at Gu Xingyin. Because of the cloak, she didn't recognize who Gu Xingyin is. Looking at Zhao Ximing's attentive appearance to her, she thought it was his new love. Thinking of this possibility, she was unhappy again. She felt that she treated Zhao Ximing with sincerity. Unexpectedly, she found a new person so quickly, which made her feel betrayed. She completely forgot that there was a Shi Lufeng standing beside her. The more Bai Xingya thought about it, the more unwilling she felt. She got up and walked to Zhao Ximing. "Brother Zhao, long time no see." Zhao Ximing nodded coldly. That Shi Lufeng stood beside Bai Xingya, just like a flower protector. Looking at Zhao Ximing's expression is very alert. Gu Xingyin is suddenly curious. What happened to the original body Gu Weixin? She gave up so many excellent pursuers and looked at Shi Lufeng in this man. "Brother Zhao, are you here for the fire eye?" As soon as Bai Xingya said this, the eyes around all looked over. Zhao Ximing once again scolded himself for being blind at the beginning. He actually likes such a brainless woman. Can such words be said casually? Seeing that Zhao Ximing didn't speak, Bai Xingya suddenly bit her lip. "I'm also here for the fire eye. Brother Zhao, your sword heart level is so high that you certainly don't need it." Can you give it to me? Before Zhao Ximing could refuse, Gu Xingyin on the side spoke. No. Bai Xingya only felt that the voice sounded familiar, but she didn't think about it. Who are you? What right do you have to answer my question on behalf of Senior Marshal Brother Zhao? Bai Xingya was not as gentle towards Gu Xingyin, who was also a woman. At this time, Zhao Ximing recovered from the shock of the goddess speaking up for him. Hearing that the goddess was being questioned, he immediately said bluntly, "Her opinion is my opinion. It just so happens that I also need the fiery eye fluid. Let's just rely on our own abilities." Bai Xingya looked at Zhao Ximing in disbelief. "Senior Brother Zhao, you weren't like this before?" Zhao Ximing silently said in his heart, "I think so too. I must have been possessed by the devil in the past." Shi Lufeng was already impatient. He put his arm around Bai Xingya's waist and looked at Zhao Ximing and Gu Xingyin in disdain. "Xingya, don't worry. I promise that the fiery eye liquid will be yours." Bai Xingya looked at the two experts standing behind him and smiled sweetly, nestling in his arms obediently. At this time, the surrounding temperature suddenly rose sharply. Zhao Ximing and the others were fine, but Bai Xingya screamed. Her exposed skin couldn't withstand the high temperature, and a string of blisters appeared on it. "I'm afraid that the fiery eye liquid is about to be born." Gu Xingyin glanced at Zhao Ximing. The two nodded and rushed towards the depths of Phoenix Perching Valley. "You guys go in too. You must bring the fiery eye liquid back." Shi Lufeng comforted Bai Xingya and turned to order the two experts behind him. Chapter 106. Gu Xingyin and Zhao Ximing were the first to act. The system was confident. "Host, don't worry. Under the same conditions, your chances of obtaining the treasure are higher than anyone else. The saying that the protagonist is favored by the laws of the world is not without reason." The truth was just as the system had said. While the others were still fretting over whether or not the magma had appeared, Zhao Ximing had already followed Gu Xingyin all the way to the place where the magma was flowing out of the Eye of Fire. Zhao Ximing said joyfully, "Rumor has it that the fire eye flowing lava is extremely hard to find. Normally, it would take 10 days to half a month to find it. I didn't think that our luck would be so good this time, to actually obtain this item on the first day." Gu Xingyin could only maintain her smile. Zhao Ximing carefully took out a palm-sized white jade bottle. Gu Xingyin could tell at a glance that this was made of cold jade. It seemed that Zhao Ximing had made a lot of preparations for this fire eye flowing lava. The entire pool of fiery eye liquid was actually completely filled by this small bottle that was no more than an inch long. Zhao Ximing carefully put away the bottle. After hesitating, he said to Gu Xingyin, "Elder, this fire eye flowing lava." Gu Xingyin had already opened her mouth to interrupt him. "I have no use for this fire eye flowing lava, you can keep it." Zhao Ximing was a bit ashamed. He originally planned to ask Gu Xingyin to see if she could give this to him. After all, one portion of fire eye flowing lava could only be used by one person. He really needed this item. He didn't think that she had the idea to give it to him from the start. Gu Shengxing knew what he was thinking from his appearance. She said, "I originally came here to see the legendary scenery of the Phoenix Perching Valley. Encountering the fire eye flowing lava was just a coincidence. You don't have to feel guilty." Seeing this, Zhao Ximing didn't say anything else. He solemnly bowed towards Gu Xingyin. "Disciple thanks Grand Marshal Uncle for his kindness. If there is a chance in the future, Disciple will do his best to repay." Gu Xingyin didn't take this promise seriously, but Zhao Ximing remembered it in his heart. "Now that everyone is looking for the fiery eye liquid, let's leave this place quickly. It's only been a day. No one will believe that we've already obtained something," Gu Xingyin said. Zhao Ximing nodded. Sure enough, when the two of them arrived at the exit of the Phoenix Perching Valley, they saw the forces of the Washing Heavens Pavilion guarding there. It seemed that they had already planned to forcefully seize the fiery eye flowing plasma, even if they didn't find it. "Junior sister, I wonder why Master called us back in such a hurry?" "That's right. It wasn't easy for us to wait for the flowing flame plasma to appear. Who would have thought that before we even started looking for it, it would already be discovered by a sect?" When the guard at the door saw the two of them in a hurry, it seemed like they really did have something urgent to attend to. In addition, the fiery eye lava had just appeared, so it was impossible for it to be found so quickly. He didn't question them in detail, and just let them go. Gu Xingyin heaved a sigh of relief. Although she was not afraid of a fight, it would inevitably delay time. If she attracted the attention of the venerable sword master, it would not be so easy to escape. I'm preparing to return to the sect and go into seclusion. I wonder if great-grand marshal uncle is all right? Gu Xingyin's mission was already completed. She nodded. I'm also preparing to return to the sect. The two of them didn't delay. Almost as soon as they returned to the sect, they heard the bounty issued by the Washing Heavens Pavilion. Whoever could cure the fire poison, the Washing Heavens Pavilion would treat them with a position of worship. Gu Xingyin understood. It seemed that Bai Xingya still couldn't avoid the original plot. Chapter 107. Clap! Shi Lufeng looked at Yi Shiwen, not looking at the cup on the ground, and roared. All of you are useless. Isn't it just a fire poison, and no one can cure it? Lufeng. I'm in pain. Bai Xingya's cry of pain came from the inner room. Shi Lufeng hurried into the room, and saw Bai Xingya tossing and turning on the bed. Her whole body's skin showed an abnormal flush, and it felt scorching hot to the touch. Bai Xingya saw Shi Lufeng come in and couldn't help but shout, Lufeng! Lufeng, save me! Shi Lufeng saw Bai Xingya in this state, and his heart was in great pain. Bai Xingya's head drooped down weakly. Shi Lufeng withdrew his hand from her nape and went out. He really loved her. There had never been a woman who could make him feel this way. Young master. At this time, a follower behind him hesitantly opened his mouth. What's the matter? Just say it. The follower hesitated for a long time, but still said, I heard that there is a way to cure this fire poison, and it requires the blood essence of someone who has the Ice Soul Sword heart. Blood essence was the most essential part of spirit. It was undoubtedly an extremely important existence for sword cultivators. Not to mention the most precious blood essence. Shi Liufeng's eyes darkened. Everyone in the world knows that only the Ice Soul Sword heart of Star Luo Sword Sect has the Ice Soul Sword heart, the direct disciple of Venerable Ling Xiao. Are you asking me to offend a sword saint expert? Star Luo Sword Sect would never agree to use half of the blood essence of an 18-year-old sword emperor expert to save an outer disciple. The follower hurriedly knelt on the ground in fear. I've only heard of this matter. I don't have any other thoughts. All right. Get up. Don't mention this matter to anyone else. The follower left trembling with fear. Shi Lufeng stood alone in the same place, slowly sinking into deep thought. On this side, Gu Xingyin already knew that Bai Xingya had been poisoned by the fire poison. She knew that if nothing unexpected happened, Shi Lufeng would soon know the way to cure it, and in the end he would still target her. Gu Xingyin had to admit that Shi Lufeng really loved Bai Xingya to the bone. But this couldn't be a reason for him to wantonly hurt others for Bai Xingya. Gu Xingyin decided to give them a big gift. The next day, a piece of news. It was said that the lover of Shi Lufeng, the young master of the Washing Heavens Pavilion, was poisoned by fire, and the only antidote was the blood essence of the Ice Heart Sword Empress of the Star-Gathering Sword Sect. As soon as the rumor came out, gossiping, everyone waited. Mainly, both were too famous. Although Shi Lufeng Pavilion could be considered a big force in the Great Sky Billow world, compared to Star Luo Sword Sect, there was still a big gap. Needless to say, Ice Soul Sword Heart made a big name for herself in the Great Sky Billow world a long time ago, and then exposed her identity in the swamp battle. She turned out to be the personal disciple of Star Luo Sword Sect's Sword Saint expert, Venerable Ling Xiao, an 18-year-old sword emperor, a peerless genius born with the Ice Soul Sword heart. Shi Liufeng's face was livid. He had obviously concealed this matter very well. Who on earth leaked the news? In this way, if Xingya's fire poison was cured or something happened to Ice Soul Sword heart, everyone's first suspect would be Shi Lufeng Pavilion. Gu Xingyin smiled slightly. I wonder if you're satisfied with this gift. Chapter 108. When Xianku arrived, he just happened to see the sly smile on his junior sister's face. He only felt that his junior sister was really cute like this. He sat down beside Gu Xingyin. I heard a piece of news recently. Gu Xingyin tilted her head to look at him. Schwanke said, "It's about you. It's said that someone has been poisoned by fire and needs your heart's blood to detoxify the poison." He seemed to be afraid that Gu Xingyin would be worried, so he added, "Junior sister, don't worry. Those people can forget about this matter. The blood of a swordsman is very important. Besides, why would my junior sister sacrifice herself for a mere stranger? Don't worry, with me here, you don't have to worry." Gu Xingyin looked at him and smiled. "Yes, with you here, I'm not afraid." Schwanke's face turned red again. The next day, Gu Xingyin was giving a lecture in the Sword Discourse Hall. When she was leaving, she met Zhao Ximing. "What's the matter?" Gu Xingyin asked. Zhao Ximing said earnestly, "I received news recently that Bai Xinya seems to have been poisoned by fire and needs." He glanced at Gu Xingyin. "Your blood is needed to cure her. That Shi Lufeng has always been lawless. Great Grandmaster, you must be careful." Gu Xingyin nodded. "I already know about this." When Xianku arrived, he saw his junior apprentice sister, who had always been cold and emotionless, standing together with a man wearing the robes of an inner disciple. The two of them were extremely close to each other, and looking at junior apprentice sister's expression, the two of them seemed to be very familiar with each other. He didn't know why, but he remembered the conversation he had with his junior sister before. With his junior sister's charm, she must have many admirers in the sect. Thinking of this, an uncontrollable anger rose in his heart. "Junior sister." He quickly walked to Gu Xingyin's side. Zhao Ximing recognized this Lingyun venerable and quickly bowed to him. "Senior brother, you're here?" Schwanke looked at Zhao Ximing. "And this is?" Zhao Ximing only felt that Schwanke was looking at him. His eyes were very calm, but he felt as if there was a heavy pressure coming towards him. In just a moment, he was drenched in cold sweat. He tried his best to straighten his back and not lose his composure. Seeing this, Schwanke's eyes flashed with a touch of admiration. However, in the next second, when he thought of how close his junior sister was to him, his heart immediately became even more unhappy. Gu Xingyin did not notice his thoughts and only said, "His name is Zhao Ximing." When Schwanke saw that his junior sister's expression didn't change at all when she mentioned Zhao Ximing, he felt a little better. He said, "I have something to talk to you about. Come with me." Gu Xingyin followed Schwanke to Lingyun Peak. "What is it, senior brother?" Schwanke was speechless. He just wanted Gu Xingyin to stay away from Zhao Ximing. What was there to talk about? "Your martial uncle Ling Zhao's disciple. In terms of seniority, in the Stargauze sword sect, except for me, everyone else is your junior. Junior sister, no matter how much those disciples admire you, it's impossible for you two to be together." Gu Xingyin was confused. Senior brother's strange words, what did he mean? While she was thinking, she suddenly looked up and saw Schwanke's expression. For a moment, she had an idea. "Senior brother, could it be that you're enlightened?" Gu Xingyin was secretly delighted, but she did not show it on her face as if she did not understand what he meant. She nodded obediently and said, "I understand. If I want to find a Taoist companion, I will consider a disciple from another sect." Schwanke felt as if a basin of cold water was poured over his head. What did junior sister mean? As long as he thought about how his junior sister, who only knew how to smile and call him senior brother, would one day snuggle in the arms of another man and smile at him like a flower, he felt an endless killing intent in his heart. He looked at Gu Xingyin with a heavy expression. "I forbid it." Chapter 109. Gu Xingyin raised her head. She didn't seem to understand why her normally gentle senior apprentice brother was suddenly so angry. She was a little uneasy. "What's wrong, senior apprentice brother? Did I say something wrong? Could it be that the people outside can't do it?" Schwanke looked at his normally cold junior apprentice sister, who was surprised and uneasy because of his words. Her seductive red lips opened and closed, as if waiting for someone to pluck them. A thought that he had never had before suddenly surged in his heart. This thought came too suddenly and too violently. He couldn't control himself, and he didn't want to control himself. So he followed his heart. This kiss came too suddenly. The second before Gu Xingyin was kissed, she was still complaining to the system. "If I knew that being jealous was so useful, I would have used it long ago. After that, she fell into a daze. Schwanke's kiss was completely different from his gentle appearance. His right hand tightly held Gu Xingyin's waist, his left hand holding the back of her head, not giving her any chance to escape. She could only weakly put her hands on his shoulders and softly fall into his arms. After the kiss, Schwanke's hand on Gu Xingyin's waist did not let go. He looked at his junior apprentice sister who was half leaning in his arms with a bright red face and slightly panting. The doubts that had been tangled in his heart for a while were solved. So he actually had this kind of feeling towards his junior apprentice sister. No wonder he would miss her when he didn't see her for a few days, and would feel uncomfortable when he saw her being intimate with other men. He lowered his head and pecked Gu Xingyin's lips again, saying in an incomparably solemn voice, "No, the disciples of the sect can't do it, and the people outside can't do it either. Other than senior apprentice brother, no one can be your Dao companion." Gu Xingyin blushed. Even though they were already an old married couple, hearing such overbearing words of love, her face would still heat up. Seeing that his junior sister seemed to be stunned by his words, Schwanke looked at her with a smile, patiently waiting for her response. Gu Xingyin only regained her senses after a long while. She stared blankly at her senior brother, as if she was frightened. Then her cheeks slowly turned red. Even her white jade-like earlobes were dyed with a layer of pink. Then she pushed Schwanke away with all her might and ran away. Xianku, however, began to smile slowly. Looking at his junior sister's reaction, it was clear that she had feelings for him. At this time, Gu Xingyin was sitting alone. She was in a very good mood and asked some questions that she usually did not dare to ask. "System, how many missions do I need to complete? If she didn't do the quest, would she never see him again? What would happen if I stopped doing quests? Will it be destroyed?" she asked. The system paused for a moment, as if it was looking for an answer. After a while it said, "There is no limit to the number of missions you can complete in the 3,000 worlds under Master's control. The target that the host inquired about could not be found. Last question, the host can rest assured. You are Master's most perfect creation, so you will not be abandoned." Although she did not get the answer she wanted, Gu Xingyin still felt relieved. No matter what, to be able to meet him in the quests was already a blessing that others could not ask for. Gu Xingyin was in a very good mood. The wind by the cliff was also very comfortable. She actually fell asleep here unknowingly. When Schwanke came over, he saw his junior sister who was sleeping soundly. His gentle gaze wandered around her face for a moment. Then he bent over and picked her up. Gu Xingyin felt the familiar embrace in a daze. She only rubbed against his chest, let out a few meaningless murmurs, and fell asleep again. Seeing that his junior sister trusted him so much, Schwanke's expression became even more gentle. Chapter 110. Gu Xingyin slept very well. Ever since she came to this world, sword cultivators could meditate to recover their energy. It was very rare for her to fall into a complete sleep like this. Schwanke was reading with his back to her. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. She quietly stood up, ready to give him a scare. She really hadn't woken up yet. How sharp were the 5 senses of a sword saint. As soon as Gu Xingyin woke up, Schwanke noticed the change in her breathing. Thus Gu Xingyin, who tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it, was easily pulled into the man's arms. Senior martial brother. Gu Xingyin was clearly not used to it. She looked at Schwanke shyly. How could he have known that she would look like this? She had just woken up and her hair and clothes were a bit messy. Her eyes were also misty. The corners of her eyes and nose were bright red. Her neck revealed a trace of delicate collarbone. Schwanke's eyes darkened. He suppressed the angry thoughts in his heart, and said to Gu Xingyin, "When martial uncle comes out of seclusion, I will go and ask for junior martial sister's hand in marriage. When I get his approval, I will go to the Gu clan to give the betrothal gifts. Martial uncle will preside over our marriage." Although Gu Xingyin was a bit uncomfortable, she still nodded. When Venerable Ling Xiao found out about this, he was very happy. He didn't have long to live. The only thing he was worried about was this female disciple of his. He had seen Schwanke's character and strength. As her master, He was naturally happy to see them become Dao companions. After his master agreed, it was time to go to the clan. Junior Marshal sister, you go back to the clan first. In the future, I will ask Marshal uncle to make the decision and personally go to the Gu clan to give the betrothal gifts. Schwanke said to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin nodded. She knew that this was the custom of this world. Schwanke personally sent Junior Marshal sister to the Stellar Sword Sect's mountain gate. He was looking forward to their next meeting. At that time, his junior sister would be his rightful and proper person. At this moment, Schwanke had never imagined that meeting his junior sister again would not be the beautiful scene he had expected. At that time, he even wanted to destroy the world to vent the hatred in his heart. Gu Xingyin had sent a message to her family in advance. She did not have much affection for the Gu clan. After all, other than living in the Gu clan when she was 8 years old, she had not returned to her original body for more than 10 years. Someone. Gu Xingyin stopped. Come out, she said indifferently. A black-robed figure suddenly appeared in front of Gu Xingyin. Little girl, you have sharp senses. The figure laughed strangely. Gu Xingyin had already unsheathed her long sword. She could feel the strength of the person in front of her. He was probably not someone she could withstand. When the black-robed man saw her appearance, he did not care at all. A sword emperor who is not even 20 years old. You are indeed talented, as expected of the 10th level Ice Soul Sword Heart. But you are unlucky to have met. He suddenly stopped talking. In the next moment, he had already appeared behind Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin did not even have time to draw her sword. She felt her vision go black. Sword sect. This was the last consciousness Gu Xingyin had before she fainted. When she woke up again, she found herself in a luxurious room. However, there was a thin black chain around her hands and feet. She frowned. If she was not mistaken, this black chain was made of meteorites. It was specially made to imprison sword cultivators. She tried to circulate the qi in her dantian. As expected, it was empty. System, where am I? Chapter 111. Before the system answered, Gu Xingyin probably knew where she was. The door was opened with a creak, and a familiar face of Gu Xingyin appeared in front of her. Shi Lufeng. Gu Xingyin secretly said. I tried to guard against it, but I didn't expect that I still couldn't avoid this plot. Shi Lufeng took Gu Weixin's heartblood for Bai Xinya. Even if she avoided meeting Shi Lufeng, she still couldn't avoid it. Shi Lufeng came in and saw that Gu Xingyin was awake. A trace of surprise flashed across his face, but it was quickly hidden. Ice Heart Sword Emperor, I've heard a lot about you. He greeted with a smile. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and said coldly, what does this mean? Shi Lufeng saw the other party's cold and arrogant attitude and didn't care. I think the Ice Heart Sword Emperor also knew the news that my lover was poisoned by fire and needed something to detoxify. Gu Xingyin. My heart's blood. Her eyes stared straight at Shi Lufeng. Shi Tian Pavilion's young pavilion master has ever thought, I Gu Wei Xian's heart blood. She cannot afford. Shi Lufeng only felt that the woman's gaze was too oppressive. He even had the idea of avoiding it for a moment, which made him feel embarrassed. He sneered and said, it's not up to the Ice Heart Sword Emperor to worry about it. I'll arrange it. Gu Xingyin sneered. Is Shitian Pavilion ready to bear the anger of my master and senior brother? Shi Liufeng's heart flashed a trace of guilty conscience. This time he caught Gu Xingyin. He didn't tell his father that he lived in Shitian Pavilion, because he knew that his father must not offend the Star Sword sect, which had 2 sword saints for Xinya. But in front of Gu Xingyin, he naturally wouldn't show it. His tone was full of malice. As long as you don't say it, who will know that the Ice Heart Sword Emperor came to me before he disappeared? Gu Xingyin's heart sank. Shi Liufeng's meaning was clearly to get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness, destroying the corpse and erasing all traces. After Shi Lufeng left, Gu Xingyin called out to the system. Can you help me unlock this chain? The system replied. I'm sorry, host. The system is unable to exert any external force on anything in this world. Gu Xingyin. Then can you help me contact the people outside? The system said. Hold on, let me check the authority. The system can randomly send a distress signal to anyone that the host has come into contact with. Gu Xingyin said helplessly. What if it's an outer sect disciple that you've only met once? The system said. The system authorization can only be issued once. This should be what the humans call relying on luck? Gu Xingyin nearly choked. Although Gu Xingyin complained that the system was unreliable, it was still their only hope. Gu Xingyin only hoped that the system could randomly select a more reliable person. Zhao Ximing had just returned from sword practice. Ever since he used the fiery eye fluid to supplement the secret technique to refine his sword heart, his realm had improved very quickly. Now he was very confident that he could get a good ranking in the upcoming Intersect Grand Competition, and strive to be accepted as a disciple by one of the elders. He thought of that figure that was as cold as snow. If that was the case, would he be closer to her? He didn't expect to be able to stand beside her. He only wanted to be able to look at her from afar. At this moment, a white light appeared in front of him. A row of fluorescent words slowly appeared in the air. Gu Weixin is in trouble. Shitian Pavilion Linquan Villa. Save him quickly. Chapter 112. The light quickly dissipated as if it had never existed. Zhao Ximing didn't dare to hide anything. He immediately went to see the sect master. Are you serious? Sage Xing he suddenly stood up from his seat. Junior Granduncle was the focus of the Star Luo sword sect, so there couldn't be any mistakes. Zhao Ximing shook his head. I only received this strange message. I didn't have time to check if it was true, so I hurried to see you. Xing he glanced at him. You did well. I'll deal with this as soon as possible. Xing he scanned the outside with his divine sense and issued several orders. Soon, the feedback he received caused him to frown. Ling Xiao Knight was in seclusion, Ling Yun Knight wasn't in the sect, and Junior Granduncle wasn't in the sect. Inform Xingyu, Xingyun, and Xingfeng to come to Star Luofeng. Zhao Ximing didn't know what decision the sect master had made. After coming down from Star Luofeng, he used several godly travel talismans and rushed to Linquan Villa. Gu Xingyin felt very cold. The feeling of having her essence blood forcibly extracted was really uncomfortable. Even though the system had shielded her from pain, the dizziness and the gradual coldness caused by excessive blood loss didn't disappear. Will I really die here? She forced herself to ask the system. The system seemed to answer something, but Gu Xingyin didn't hear it. She fell asleep. Young master, more than half of the essence blood in her heart has been extracted. It's more than enough to treat the fire poison. Shi Lufeng nodded with satisfaction. You did well. Get rid of this person for me. Remember, don't leave any traces. He took the jade bottle filled with Gu Xingyin's blood and left. The remaining person came to the bed. He was about to make a move when he saw Gu Xingyin's pale face due to excessive blood loss. He suddenly hesitated. He looked greedily at Gu Xingyin's snow-white face and felt his throat go dry. He murmured, "It's a pity to kill such a stunning beauty like her. Why don't you let me have some fun before she dies?" Of course, he couldn't do it here. Otherwise, the young master would definitely blame him. The man picked up the unconscious Gu Xingyin and walked out through a secret passage. They went all the way to a desolate and uninhabited place. What an exquisite person. The man's finger lingered on Gu Xingyin's face as a hint of madness flashed through his eyes. The proud daughter of the heavens had caused such a perfect person to be torn apart. This was truly a matter that made one's blood boil. He lowered his head and slowly unbuttoned Gu Xingyin's clothes. The system looked a little anxious, but no matter how it called out, Gu Xingyin did not respond at all. Gu Xingyin's belt had already been taken off, and her snow-white outer garment was spread open, revealing an equally snow-white inner garment. The man's throat couldn't help but swallow a few times. His hands were trembling with excitement. He was ready to remove the eyesore. Suddenly, his body shook, as if he had been attacked by something invisible. His whole body softly fell to the ground. The system ignored him. It was the system's product. This person would not wake up for 10 days to half a month. Host, quickly wake up. The system looked at the host's increasingly pale face and couldn't help but feel anxious. It had never been so annoyed. It was only a guidance system. unlike some of its peers who could provide physical help to the host. Someone came? The system sensed the arrival of the person, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 113. Zhao Ximing was worrying about how to enter the waterside villa. The Washing Heavens pavilion was heavily guarded. It was a fool's dream for a swordsman like him to sneak in. An indescribable feeling attacked his heart, making him involuntarily walk in a certain direction. The more he walked, the more intense the feeling became until he saw the figure lying on the ground. Damn it. With just a glance, Zhao Ximing understood what had happened. He quickly ran forward and helped Gu Xingyin up. Great Martial Granduncle? Great Martial Granduncle. Only then did he realize that something was wrong with Gu Xingyin. Her face was pale and her breathing was weak. He reached out his hand and felt Gu Xingyin's pulse. Washing Heavens Pavilion. Zhao Ximing's eyes were almost red. Martial Granduncle's appearance clearly showed that his blood essence was almost completely drained. He trembled as he covered Gu Xingyin's clothes and tied her belt. Then he walked to the unconscious man. Although he didn't know why the man was unconscious, Zhao Ximing didn't want to know. He unsheathed his sword and swung it down. System. Well done. Zhao Ximing didn't dare to delay. He fed Gu Xingyin a qi-nourishing pill and said, "Sorry for the offense." Then he carried her and rushed toward the Stellar Sword sect. Xuanke, who was fighting with an overlord-class demonic beast in the distant western wasteland, suddenly felt a wave of panic. He didn't know where this feeling came from. He only felt that something unbearable had happened. Junior sister. His pupils shrank and his face turned pale. He took a look at the moon-crowned serene lotus that hadn't fully matured yet. This was a gift he had prepared for his junior sister. Now he could only give it up for now. The few Taoists of the Stellar Sword sect arrived at the waterside villa. Taoist Xingyu's divine sense swept out. The divine sense belonging to the sword sect instantly surrounded the entire waterside villa, and didn't miss a single corner. However, she didn't find Martial Granduncle's figure. She frowned doubtfully. Could it be that the information they received was wrong? No. She could clearly see that in one of the rooms, there was a thin and weak woman whose body was abnormally flushed. She was half lying and being fed a bowl of bright red medicine. How was that medicine? It was clearly a bowl of blood. Sage Xingyu suddenly recalled the rumor from a few days ago. Wasn't that woman suffering from fire poison? That bowl of blood? Sage Xingyu's face instantly darkened. She didn't say anything, but directly pulled out her sword and slashed at the Spirit Spring Manor. Junior sister, what's wrong? Reverend Xingyun and Reverend Xingfeng, who were traveling together, looked at Reverend Xingyu in surprise. Sage Xingyu told them about his previous guess. How dare he from the heavens washing pavilion? Several elders were unable to restrain their anger. At this time, several disheveled figures flashed out. It was Shi Lufeng by Xinya, and the others. They were sent by the Shitian Pavilion Master to protect him, and they managed to escape the calamity. Even so, the sword sect's sword was not easy to receive, and they seemed to be in a sorry state. Who are you people? Why did you suddenly attack my Lingquan resort? Shi Lufeng recognized the Starnet sword sect's attire on the elders. His expression changed, and he forced himself to put on a brave front. Sage Xingyu flipped her hand and slashed at Bai Xinya. Block her. Shi Liufeng's eyes were about to split as he shouted to the two sword venerables beside him. Puff! Puff! The two sword venerables joined forces and suffered serious injuries, but they could only block Sage Xingyu's attack. Where is our young martial granduncle now? Sage Xingyu's face was frosty. Shi Lufeng gritted his teeth. What young martial granduncle? I don't know him at all. Seeing him like this, Sage Xingyu snorted. Without saying anything, she slashed at him again. Chapter 114. Shi Lufeng looked at the two sword venerables lying on the ground with a pale face. He never thought that the Star Sword sect would be so overbearing. Even without concrete evidence, they dared to injure people. He said sternly, "Are you declaring war on the Washing Heavens Pavilion?" Sage Xingyu wanted to attack again but was stopped by Sage Xingyun. Bring these two back to the sect and wait for the sect master to make a decision, Sage Xingyun said. He looked at the two people on the ground as if he was looking at two dead objects. Schwanke returned to the Star Sword sect and received a message from Sage Xingluo in his cave. He was about to head to the Washing Heavens Pavilion when he sensed a familiar aura. It was Junior Sister. His figure flashed and disappeared from sight. Zhao Ximing carried the person in his arms and rushed for an entire day. When he saw the Star Sword sect in front of him, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. A huge pressure descended and almost made him kneel on the ground. Fortunately, in the next moment, the pressure disappeared without a trace, and his arms became empty at the same time. Suppressing the disappointment in his heart, Zhao Ximing only had time to see a figure flash by. Schwanke's hands that were holding Gu Xingyin were trembling. The breathing of the junior sister in his arms was so weak. Her face was so pale that it was transparent. It was as if she would disappear in the next second. Sage Xingluo was the first to know that Gu Xingyin was rescued. In the next moment, Sage Xingyu and the rest returned to the sect. He immediately went to the Lingyun Peak, but was blocked by the restriction outside Schwanke's cave. This block lasted for half a month. Until half a month later, Schwanke walked out. Sage Xingluo thought that he was looking at Venerable Ling Xiao. Schwanke said coldly to Sage Xingluo, "Guard Junior Sister for me." Sage Xingluo asked, "Where is Martial Granduncle going?" Schwanke's eyes were filled with killing intent. It's time to settle the score between Junior Sister and the Washing Heavens Pavilion. In less than 2 days, the news of Venerable Lingyun of the Star Sword sect massacring the entire Washing Heavens Pavilion spread throughout the Sky Billow world. From then on, the Heavenly Cleansing Pavilion no longer existed in this world. Shi Lufeng, who was locked up in the Star Gathering Sword sect's water prison, accidentally learned of this news. "Impossible. I hid this from my father, so he didn't know about it. Your Star Azura Sword sect can't do this." He couldn't believe it. The Starnet Sword sect disciple in charge of the guard looked at him with a face full of resentment. "Whether it's true or not, you just have to go out and take a look to know. It's spread throughout the entire Great Sky Billow world. From now on, there's no more Heavens Washing Pavilion. Oh right. I almost forgot. You actually dared to harm Great Martial Granduncle. You will never be able to go out again." Washing Heavens Pavilion collapsed onto the ground, exhausted. He had originally hoped that his father would come and rescue him, but he didn't expect that the Star Azura Sword sect would actually act so ruthlessly. He had never thought that just because he did something so insignificant for the woman he loved, he would actually ruin the thousands of years of foundation of the Heavens Washing Pavilion and the lives of countless disciples. It was all because of Bai Xinya. It was all her fault. He looked at Bai Xinya, who was curled up in the corner and struggling in pain, and a trace of hatred suddenly flashed through his eyes. If it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have been so hot-headed as to target the Iceheart Sword Monarch, and thus offend the Star-Gathering Sword sect. If it wasn't for her, he would still be the high and mighty young master of the Washing Heavens Pavilion, pursued by everyone, and not fall into prison and be trampled on by others. If it wasn't for her, the Washing Heavens Pavilion wouldn't have collapsed, and his father wouldn't have died. If it wasn't for her. A trace of madness flashed through Shi Liufeng's eyes. Chapter 115. By the time the disciples of the Star Sword sect found out, Bai Xinya had already been killed by Shi Lufeng, who had fallen into madness. This woman probably never thought that she would one day die in the hands of a man who had always been obedient to her. When Gu Xingyin woke up, she felt weak all over. She was no stranger to this feeling. Gu Xingyin complained, "System, did you notice that I seem to have to experience the same scene in almost every world?" The system was a bit guilty. "Host, there's no way to control this. Every main character's path of growth is not smooth sailing." Gu Xingyin. Schwanke lifted the curtain and came in, his expression gentle. "Junior Sister." Gu Xingyin smiled and wanted to get up, but found that her body didn't have the strength. She could only helplessly give up. "Senior brother, I didn't sleep for too long, right?" Schwanke greedily looked at this lively junior sister and said softly, "It's only been half a year." Gu Xingyin didn't know why, but she felt that although her senior brother looked the same as before, she had a strange feeling in her heart. She wanted to reach out for a cup, but Schwanke held her down and personally filled her cup. He also refused her request to do it himself, and fed her without any explanation. It was clear that her senior brother was treating her like a fragile crystal person. "I'm fine, senior brother." Gu Xingyin was helpless. In this half-year, the Star Sword sect used all of its power to find treasures for Gu Xingyin to nurse her body back to health. Schwanke didn't hesitate to use his true qi every day to help her unblock her meridians. Gu Xingyin's body had gradually returned to normal because of the lack of blood essence. In the face of Gu Xingyin's words, Schwanke smiled gently. "And I know. Come, open your mouth." Gu Xingyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Does this mean that I know what you mean, but I don't want to do it?" Not only did he not allow Gu Xingyin to do anything herself, but ever since Gu Xingyin woke up, Schwanke had never left her side. He even allowed her to get too close to others. Gu Xingyin also knew that her previous appearance might have frightened him. Although she felt a little helpless, she didn't reject this kind of behavior. Half a year later, the Starnet Sword sect's venerable Ling Xiao presided over the wedding between his personal disciple, the Ice Heart Sword Monarch, and his martial nephew, the venerable Ling Yun. It had become a major event in the Great Sky Billow world in recent decades. After a few more years, the Ice Heart Sword Sovereign successfully broke through and became the Ice Heart Sword Venerable. Honorable Swordmaster Iceheart and her Tao companion, the Cloud-Soaring Supremacy, had a very close relationship. Many people said that they had seen the figures of Honorable Swordmaster Iceheart and the Cloud-Soaring Supremacy all over the Sky Surge Great World. 100 years later, Sword Venerable Iceheart broke through again and became the Iceheart Swordmaster. Another 100 years later, the Grand Elder of the Starnet Sword sect, the Venerable Ling Xiao, reached the end of his lifespan and closed his eyes at the Ling Xiao Peak. For the next 500 years, the world never saw the shadow of the Ice Heart Sword Master again. Some said that she had suffered a huge blow due to her master's death and was unable to recover from it. Others said that the Ice Heart Sword Master had died in a duel 100 years ago. There were also some who said that the Ice Heart Sword Master was only in seclusion to cultivate. Until one day, when the wind was gentle and the sun was bright, the sound of a sword in the 9 heavens rang out. All sword cultivators vaguely sensed something and looked in the same direction. The long swords in their hands were all unsheathed at the same time, and their figures bent in the same direction. 10,000 swords bowed, and a sword saint appeared. That was the direction of the Starnet Sword sect. From then on, the Ice Heart Sword sect no longer existed. There was only a sword saint expert, the Venerable Iceheart. Chapter 116. Gu Xingyin found herself in a car. Sitting beside her was a very capable woman wearing a black business suit and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. Seeing that she had woken up, she took out a bottle of water from her handbag and handed it to her. "You must be tired today. I've pushed back all the jobs for you for the next week. You should have a good rest." Gu Xingyin cheered. "Thank you, Sister Qin." In this world, the original name was Ruanqi. Now she was a well-known movie queen in Z country. The woman in the black suit was her manager, Chen Rong. Ruanqi was a model. She was born with a good foundation. She had a slim waist and long legs. Her facial features were exquisite. When she was 18 years old, she won the international supermodel competition. In 2 years, she was promoted to the ranks of the international supermodels. When she was 20 years old, she started to enter the entertainment industry. Now, she was 24 years old, and she was already the #1 female star in Z country. Because she was a supermodel, Ruanqi had a strong aura. People who stood beside her would often unconsciously feel suppressed. Therefore, Ruanqi was affectionately called Her Majesty by her fans. Only Chen Rong knew that this Her Majesty, who was incomparably powerful in front of her fans, was actually a little princess with a pink heart in private. The car soon arrived at the apartment where Ruanqi lived. This was provided by Ruanqi's entertainment company, Star Entertainment. It was one of the famous rich areas in Qinghua City. The security measures were excellent, and even paparazzi would have a hard time entering. Chen Rong personally sent Gu Xingyin to the door of the room. She only left after watching her enter the room. Gu Xingyin felt weak at this time. In her previous world, she was a sword saint. She rarely had this kind of feeling. She walked into the bathroom, filled the bathtub with hot water, dripped essential oil, and soaked herself in. She comfortably moaned and began to organize the information about this world in her mind. The original Ruan Kui was now an internationally renowned movie queen, and the other target was now awkwardly playing a small supporting role. Ming Shujia. This woman was about the same age as Ruan Kui, but her fate was completely different. Her appearance was not too outstanding in the entertainment industry, where beauties were everywhere. Her facial features were not very distinctive. Since her debut, she had been receiving some small investment scripts. Even these scripts, she could only play a supporting role. However, at the age of 24, her luck seemed to have changed. First, the director of a low-budget literary film took a fancy to her and informed her to audition for the lead role. No one knew that this unremarkable literary film would actually win the Best Film Award at the internationally renowned film festival at that time. Although she herself did not win the Best Actress award, she became famous because of this and quickly entered the public eye. After that, all kinds of good things came one after another. She took on several scripts that were not well known, but had a good reputation after being released. Gradually, she was promoted from a small actress to the ranks of the popular starlets. Everyone thought that she was just lucky. There were even media reports that called her the luckiest artist of the year. However, Gu Xingyi knew that it wasn't because she was lucky, but because Ming Shujia wasn't Ming Shujia at all. The original Ming Shujia fell down while hanging on a wire and was sent to the hospital with a concussion. When she woke up again, no one knew that her soul had changed. Chapter 117. The soul that occupied Ming Shujia's body came from 10 years later, so she knew which of the current scripts would be dark horses and which would be popular. With such a big cheat in her hands, it was hard for Ming Shujia not to be popular. If that was the case, Ruan Kui and her would not have had much interaction, let alone any enmity. However, Ruan Kui was one of the few actors in the entertainment industry who was clean and honest. She had fame, ability, and capital. She did not need to rely on those things to create momentum for herself and fight for resources for herself. Ming Shujia was different. Therefore, during a banquet with an investor, Ming Shujia was met by Ruan Kui, who came to eat with her friends. If a female star was exposed to this kind of thing, especially someone like Ming Shujia who walked the youthful path, her career would be ruined. Actually, they only had a quick glance at each other. Ming Shujia had heavy makeup on, so Ruan Kui did not recognize her at all. However, the next day, Ming Shujia was still exposed to the news of having fun with a rich businessman late at night. Although the photo was vague and there was no real evidence, Ming Shujia's company's PR team dealt with it quickly. At this time, Ming Shujia was not affected. However, she used this opportunity to hate Ruan Kui. She thought that it was her who leaked the news to the media, which put her in danger. Ming Shujia's revenge came quickly. She knew some inside information that others did not know. She even secretly colluded with a rich man who was rumored to be in love with the queen. She promised that as long as he did what she wanted, she would help him get Ruan Kui. The two of them conspired to drug Ruan Kui at a banquet. The rich man could not help but loot a burning house and possess Ruan Kui. He even purposely leaked the news to the media. Ruan Kui's reputation fell to the bottom. At this time, the rich man affectionately said that he had loved her for a long time and was willing to marry her. At that time, Ruan Kui was deeply touched and married him regardless of her manager's objection. However, not long after the marriage, she found that the rich man was not loyal to his marriage. He had other women outside. She was furious, but only received disdainful mockery from her husband. "You're just an actress that everyone hates. Do you really think you're still the queen?" Ruan Kui wanted a divorce, but her husband threatened her with her virginity. Her life was miserable, and her parents, who were university professors, were fired because of her. After muddling along for a few years, she finally embarked on the path of no return, suicide. As for Ming Shujia, she relied on her unique vision and smoothly became the new generation's movie queen. Gu Xingyin calculated the time. Ming Shujia had just accepted an artistic film that would allow her to make a comeback. The cast had just been selected. In other words, the current Ming Shujia was still a small artist who was struggling on the sidelines. Gu Xingyin didn't take her too seriously. With Ruan Qi's current status, she didn't even need to do anything to Ming Shujia. She thought for a moment and said to the system, "System, help me collect a photo of Ming Shujia drinking with an investor. I want her role to be cancelled." As far as she knew, Ming Shujia had attended quite a number of such banquets in her early days. The system was quite efficient in collecting information. In less than an hour, a bunch of photos of actors being slept with appeared on the major gossip forums. Chapter 118. Why? Ming Shujia looked at the director in disbelief. She had just been informed that the female lead had been replaced. How could she accept this? Although this literary film had a small investment, it had a good reputation. In order to get the role of the female lead, she had done a lot of preparation. She didn't even hesitate to put down her status to accompany those fat men. The director took out his phone and opened a web page for her to see. You also know that our film is going for the path of youth and pure love. Let's not talk about other things first. The female lead actress must not have any scandals. Otherwise, it will have a big impact on the film. The director was also a little disappointed with Ming Shujia. When he first saw her, he was very satisfied. Ming Shujia's fresh and natural aura was exactly the image of the female lead in his mind. Unfortunately, it was useless now. When the film was broadcasted, the audience would think of the scandals on the internet when they saw the female lead. This film was not one of those brainless commercial films that sold gimmicks to gain popularity. If this happened, it would undoubtedly be a fatal blow to the ambitious director who participated in the film festival. Ming Shujia's heart was miserable. She didn't know who she had offended to be assigned such a thing. In this way, it was impossible for her to get the role. At this time, Gu Xingyin was sleeping soundly when she was woken up by a call from her best friend. She asked the queen to pick her up at the airport. Song Sisi was the best friend who grew up with the original owner. Now he was a slightly famous fashion designer. Gu Xingyin put on her sunglasses and baseball cap and went to the airport. "I missed you so much." Song Sisi gave Gu Xingyin a loving hug and then looked at Gu Xingyin with shining eyes. "Cuckoo, you are really getting more and more beautiful. Your long legs are really mesmerizing." For fashion designers, a good figure was more important than anything else. Ruan Qi was 1.78 meters tall. Her figure was almost perfect. Her long legs were the envy of others. Song Sisi always drooled when looking at her. "Okay, let's go back and eat first." The two chatted happily and didn't notice that in the VIP passage not far away, a tall man wearing sunglasses was looking at them for a long time until they left. "Ruan Qi?" The man softly uttered the name, his beautifully curved lips forming a mesmerizing smile. "Finally, I found you. Mr. Gardner?" The staff next to him shouted in confusion. The man came back to his senses and said lightly, "Let's go." After dinner, Ruan Qi was dragged by Song Sisi to the villa where she lived. That's right, a villa. Song Sisi was a rich second-generation heir, so she generously used more than 10 rooms to store her works. Gu Xingyin was pulled over by her to act as a fitting rack. Gu Xingyin looked at the room full of clothes. She had to admit that Song Sisi had an amazing talent in fashion design. Inspiration, the dream of all designers. Although these clothes didn't look perfect, some of the details were amazing. Gu Xingyin knew that in the upcoming fashion show, Song Sisi would shock the world with a set of male and female frost domain. Chapter 119. Gu Xingyin had a deep impression of the ice and snow domain because it was so famous. The male model was the top international supermodel, Ludwig Gardner. The female model, Cecilia, was not very famous, but she became one of the most popular female supermodels because of this fashion show. At that time, Song Sisi was not very famous. Although she did not know why Ludwig, who was already an international supermodel, chose this set of clothes, Gu Xingyin was not willing to give up this opportunity this time. "Sisi, are you going to participate in the Tsinghua International Fashion Week this time?" Gu Xingyin asked Song Sisi, who was holding the clothes to compare on her. Song Sisi paused. "Ko, how did you know?" She was a little surprised. She had never told anyone about this. Tsinghua Fashion Week was one of the top international fashion weeks. Although she was encouraged by her mentor, Kevin, the design director of the international luxury brand CCRU, to show her work at this fashion week, she did not tell anyone. This girl was still a little unconfident, and was afraid that others would say that she was overestimating herself. Gu Xingyin said with a smile, "We grew up together. Do you think I don't know what you are thinking?" She continued, "When the time comes, I will be your model, okay?" Song Sisi was not just surprised, but pleasantly surprised. She knew how talented Ruan Kui was in the field of modeling. Many international fashion brands had tried to invite her to be their global spokesperson. However, since she entered the entertainment industry 4 years ago, she had not shown up at any fashion week. She was actually willing to step on the runway again for her. Gu Xingyin looked at Song Sisi, who seemed to be so touched that she was about to cry. He laughed and said, "Okay, I just believe in your talent. I'm betting that the clothes you design this time can make me stand out in the limelight. If the clothes you design are too ugly, I will regret it." Song Sisi exhaled. When she talked about her design, her eyes lit up. "Let's go, I will show you." She pulled Gu Xingyin and walked straight into the innermost room. Song Sisi took out the key and opened the door. Gu Xingyin realized that the room was surprisingly big, but there were only 2 sets of clothes in the whole room. Song Sisi walked to one of the hangers and lifted the curtain covering the clothes. Gu Xingyin's eyes widened instantly. So beautiful. What appeared in front of him was a silver-white female gown. The neckline was a gorgeous lace V-neck design, and the material was light and elegant silk. It was perfect to the touch and fall. The transparent long sleeves were covered with snowflakes, and the layers of the gown were dotted with countless tiny diamonds. It was as if countless snowflakes had fallen around her, blooming with elegant colors under the light. Luxurious beyond compare. Gu Xingyin was amazed. She could tell at a glance that the clothes were inlaid with at least hundreds of small diamonds, all of which were genuine. Song Sisi looked at Gu Xingyin's eyes, and was also very happy. "What do you think?" Gu Xingyin took a deep breath and looked at her sincerely. "Sisi, you will definitely shock the whole world." Song Sisi didn't seem to expect to receive such high praise, but she was very happy. "Then I will take advantage of your auspicious words." Gu Xingyin asked, "Have you decided on the male model?" Song Sisi shook his head. "The mentor has seen my work. He said that he already has a suitable male model." Gu Xingyin understood. It turned out that Kevin had come forward. No wonder Ludwig had chosen Song Sisi's work at that time. Chapter 120. Sure enough, the next day, Gu Xingyin received a call from Song Sisi. Ku, do you know who my mentor found for me? Ludovic. Ludovic Gardner. That's my Prince Charming. To be able to make him walk a show for me in my lifetime, I can die without regrets. Gu Xingyin waited patiently for Song Sisi to finish venting her emotions. Then she asked, "Has it been decided?" Song Sisi calmed down a little and said, "Not yet. He will come over this afternoon to see my works. Could come with him. Try it on and see if there is anything that needs to be changed." Gu Xingyin nodded and called her agent. "Sister Chun, I plan to participate in the Tsinghua Fashion Week next month." Chun Rong was surprised. "You plan to return to the fashion industry?" Gu Xingyin shook her head and said with a smile, "That's not what I mean. It's just that Sisi is going to participate in this fashion week. I promised her that I would be her mute." Chun Rong's tone was a little worried. "I know you are very good friends, but although Miss Song is talented, she has never participated in such a big event. What if? Have you considered your image?" At Ruan Qi's level, every move had to be in line with her identity. She hadn't been on the runway for 4 years. If the effect this time was not satisfactory, it would be a big blow to her reputation. Gu Xingyin knew that Chun Rong was thinking for her. She chuckled. "Sister Chun, if you knew who Sisi's model was this time, I'm afraid you wouldn't say that." Chun Rong was a little curious. "Oh, who is it?" Gu Xingyin said softly, "Ludovic Gardner." Chen Rong was silent for a few seconds. After a while she said excitedly, "Who did you say it was? I didn't hear wrong. Is it Ludovic? King Ludovic of the runway?" Gu Xingyin knew that this would be the reaction. This serious and somewhat old-fashioned agent was actually a die-hard fan of Ludwig. Her tone was light as she said, "Sai, I'm going to try on some clothes this afternoon. I don't know, maybe we can take a group photo or an autograph or something." Chen Rong interrupted her. "Are you at home now? I'll be there in half an hour. How can I miss such an important event?" Gu Xingyin hung up the phone. Done. She knew that Chen Rong would not stop her from bringing up Ludwig. Not only was Chen Rong a fan of his, but he was also known as the king of the fashion industry. His shows had never disappointed. In the afternoon, Gu Xingyin came to Song Cici's house as promised. She was chatting with an old man with white hair. "Kevin, long time no see." Gu Xingyin greeted him. This person was Song Cici's mentor, the design director of CRUU. "Hey, Juan." Kevin gave her a warm hug. 2 years ago, the two had worked together. At that time, Kevin had asked Juan Kui to be her exclusive model, but he had been rejected. However, this cute old man had always been thinking about Juan Kui. "The fashion industry is really dim without your figure. Juan, I heard from Cici that you want to be her model?" Kevin's eyes were shining. Gu Xingyin nodded. "Great." Kevin praised loudly. "The first thing I thought of when I saw this set of clothes was you. Only you can satisfy people's fantasy of the Ice Queen." Chapter 121. Looks like I'm late? A deep male voice sounded. Gu Xingyin followed the sound and looked over. She recognized the man at first glance. It was Ludwig Gardner. Although Juan Kui had never seen this man before, she had seen his face in magazines many times. But for some people you would only be able to feel their charm when you meet them in person. Ludwig Gardner's facial features were undoubtedly good-looking. Whether it was his eyebrows, eyes, nose bridge, or even his lips, which were praised by countless people, they were all in just the right places. However, for anyone who saw him in person, the first thing they would notice would definitely not be his appearance, but his aura. It was as if they were facing a king, a god, and they were imprisoned in his omnipresent domain. This was the aura of a top supermodel. Kevin said, "Hey, you're late today. Remember to treat us to dinner later." Ludwig's beautiful blue eyes were like the deep starry sky. His smile was extremely charming. "No problem." He turned his head. "Then let me first get to know these two beautiful ladies." Song Cici was already stunned when she saw Ludwig. Only now did she come back to her senses. Looking at the face that was more impactful in reality than in magazines, her face instantly turned red. "Hello, I'm the designer, Song Cici." Ludwig bent down and shook hands with him. Gu Xingyin, on the other hand, greeted him generously. "Hello, Mr. Gardner. I've heard a lot about you." This man was so tall. Juan Kui was 1.78 meters tall, which was already considered very tall. This man was a head taller than her, so he was definitely more than 1.9 meters tall. Ludwig Gardner winked at him and spoke in authentic Z Nation's language. "What a polite way to address me. You can call me Ludwig, the beautiful Miss Juan Kui." When he smiled, his eyes seemed to be filled with deep affection, which made people want to drown in them. Gu Xingyin also smiled. "Then Ludwig, I hope we get along well." This man was indeed charming. If she didn't already have a partner, she might have been moved by him. Kevin suddenly said in a strange tone, "Sigh, poor old Kevin, no one cares about him. The lovely ladies only like handsome young men." Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. Kevin, this old urchin, was really funny. "Let's take a look at the clothes." Song Cici was interrupted and remembered his business. She first showed off her female outfit. "So beautiful." Ludwig didn't hide the shock in his eyes. He looked at Juan Kui. "Is Miss Juan the model for this dress?" Juan Kui smiled at him. "I'm here for the same reason as Mr. Ludwig." "Then I'm honored." Song Cici opened the men's clothing again. This time, Ludwig looked at the clothes seriously. Finally, he straightened his body and said to Song Cici, "Let's go." "Miss Song Cici, you really are an amazing designer." Song Sisi was a little nervous. Then Ludwig, are you willing to be my model? Ludwig's mouth curved into a charming smile. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked at Gu Xingyin. If Miss Ruan is willing, I naturally have no objections. Chapter 122. His words made everyone look at Gu Xingyin. Kevin even had a hint of ridicule in his eyes. Gu Xingyin smiled calmly and blinked. Ludwig, if I were a little narcissistic, would I think that you've fallen in love with me? Ludwig laughed softly. Miss Ruankai is the dream lover of countless people. Maybe I'll really fall in love with you at first sight. Gu Xingyin seemed helpless. All right, it seems that we're destined to cooperate this time. As soon as she said this, everyone understood what she meant. She agreed. Ludwig stretched out his hand again. Happy cooperation. Song Sisi couldn't wait. Quick, you two go try on the clothes. Oh my god, I can't wait to see the combination of His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Queen. Gu Xingyin took the clothes to the fitting room. When both sides came out, they were shocked by each other's beauty. Gu Xingyin's appearance was originally imposing, and her temperament was different from ordinary people after the tempering of several worlds. This set of clothes seemed to be tailor-made for her. She wore a crown of ice and snow and stood there as if she really was the only queen in the world of ice and snow. Extremely cold and also extremely beautiful. But Ludwig was different. He was the queen's most loyal knight. His style was also silver white, and the clothes-fitting design outlined his perfect figure at a glance. The cloak of the same color fell to the ground, adding a sense of sternness. His blue eyes were filled with love and loyalty as he looked at his only queen, and knelt down on one knee. My Majesty. He leaned over and gently kissed the queen's ring. Kacha. Song Sisi clutched his chest and held his phone. I can't take it anymore. Oh my god, I can guarantee that if this photo spreads, many people's blood will be emptied. After being interrupted by Song Sisi, the atmosphere disappeared without a trace. Ludwig let go of Gu Xingyin's hand and stood up. Gu Xingyin also breathed a sigh of relief. Being stared at by Ludwig like that, she actually felt her heart race. The few of them discussed their own ideas again. By the time they finished talking, they realized that it was already dinner time. Ludwig said, I promised Kevin to treat you guys to a meal. I wonder if you guys are willing to do me the honor? Of course, they had no objections. Gu Xingyin remembered something and called Chen Rong to come over. Chen fangirl, Rong successfully got a group photo and an autograph of her idol, and left with a satisfied look. The four of them did not expect that the next day, the news of them eating together would be exposed. The movie queen dines with the king of the fashion industry. Movie queen Ruan Kai, deskmate with CU designer and international supermodel, is suspected to be returning to the fashion industry. Ruan Kai and Ludwig had an intimate conversation, and the two are suspected to be deeply in love. Most of these reports were just groundless accusations. Gu Xingyin just skimmed through them and put them aside. Her Weibo account blew up frowny face awe. Her Majesty the Queen and His Majesty the King are together? My baby's life is complete. Is Her Majesty the Queen returning to the fashion industry? I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway. Her Majesty the Queen is so beautiful. Ludwig is so handsome. Who is that foreign man? He's so handsome, but Her Majesty the Queen belongs to Brother Fong. Don't tear apart Brother Fong and Ku. I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway. I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway +1. I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway +2. I beg Her Majesty the Queen to return to the runway +1. Chapter 123. Gu Xingyin was lying on the bed with a facial mask on her face as she scrolled through the comments on her phone. Chen Rong glanced at her and said, This won't affect you much, but don't tell anyone that you're going to participate in Tsinghua Fashion Week. Gu Xingyin said, I know, Sister Chen. Chen Rong left quickly. Gu Xingyin opened her account and sent a message. I met Ludwig. He's really handsome. Picture. After sending the message, she turned off her phone, washed up, and went to bed. When she turned on her phone the next day, She found that her Weibo post had been reposted countless times. It turned out that Ludwig had followed her and reposted her Weibo post with a comment. "You're also very beautiful, Your Majesty." He even added an emoticon. F***CK, when I think of the powerful king using emoticons, I'm so shamelessly cute. This is so full of JQ. What's with this faint feeling of pampering? Tell me this isn't my imagination. This isn't your imagination +1. This isn't your imagination +2. This isn't your imagination +3. This isn't your imagination plus ID number. I'm here to destroy the formation. Although I'm a firm supporter, I somehow feel that the King X Queen CP is also very cool. What should I do? Long live the two kings. Long live the two kings. At this time, Gu Xingyin's phone rang. A director contacted me today. He has a movie on hand and asked if you want to take it? Chen Rong said over the phone. Gu Xingyin wailed. Sister Chen, what happened to the 1-week holiday? Don't you love me anymore? Chen Rong was cold and unmoved. The director is Li Fengyan. Gu Xingyin immediately changed her words. What movie? Let me see. Chen Rong knew her reaction would be like this. She said, I've already replied to Director Li. I'll give him a reply tomorrow. I'll go to your place this afternoon. Gu Xingyin actually had a rough idea of which movie it was. Li Fengyan was one of the most famous directors in Country Z. His style was known for its grandeur and strong rhythm, which was a necessity for commercial films. However, Director Li's films were always able to dig out a trace of humanistic feelings amidst the passion. He was one of the rare directors who was well received and popular. Calculating the time, among the movies that he had been preparing recently, there was only one that required an actress of Ruan Qi's caliber, Divinity. This film was known as a milestone in Z Country's film industry. Not only did it reach the peak of 10 billion in box office sales, but it also swept all the awards in that year's film festival, creating a brand new model. In this movie, the main lead and the main supporting roles all became the most popular people in the world. At that time, Ruan Qi had accepted another drama. It was a foreign commercial blockbuster that had also cost a lot of money to shoot, but it was overshadowed by Divinity. This time Gu Xingyin wouldn't give up this opportunity. Moreover, it seemed that Ming Shujia also played a supporting role in this film. She wouldn't give Ming Shujia any chance to stand out. At this time, what was Ming Shujia doing? She was trying her best to avoid a perverted hand on her thigh. Why? You're not willing? The drunk man opened his mouth and his breath reeked of alcohol. Why are you still pretending to be a chaste woman? If you're so noble, how did you get those photos? I'll be frank here. If you accompany me for one night, I'll throw money at you for that role. How about it? The man looked at her from the corner of his eyes. Ming Shujia's heart trembled with anger. Her face turned pale, but in the end, she revealed a sweet smile and slowly placed her hands on the man's chest. No matter what, she couldn't lose this movie. Chapter 124. Chen Rong came quickly. As Gu Xingyin expected, she had the script for Divinity. Gu Xingyin looked at it for a while and took a deep breath. Sister Chen, tell Director Li that I'll take this script. Chen Rong wasn't surprised. She nodded. I'll reply to them later. We'll discuss the details later. Hello, Sister Kai. Hello, Sister Wan. Gu Xingyin walked in the company and many artists took the initiative to greet her. Gu Xingyin returned a friendly smile. A few newly signed artists were secretly discussing. Oh my god, movie Queen Ruan is so friendly. She doesn't put on airs at all. As newly signed artists who weren't well known, they had learned a lot in the past few days. Many A-list and B-list artists didn't even look at them. They didn't expect the most famous movie Queen Ruan Qi to be so kind. The agent in charge of guiding them looked at them and said, Movie Queen Ruan is famous for her good temper in the entertainment industry. She never makes things difficult for newcomers. Ruan Qi's company, Star Entertainment, was one of the biggest entertainment companies in the country. She had a few award-winning actors and actresses under her wing, as well as many A-listers. However, even here, Ruan Qi was undoubtedly the #1 star. Qi. A clear voice sounded. Gu Xingyin smiled at him. Brother Fong. The person who came was wearing a light gray windbreaker. He was slender and had gentle eyes. Fong Ming, 30 years old, had won the movie King twice and was one of the male artists who had worked with Ruan Qi the most. They were called the best on-screen couple. Many fans hoped that they could become a couple and called them the Fongka couple. Fong Ming had always liked Ruan Qi, but Ruan Qi had always treated him as a good friend and a good partner. She had even explicitly rejected him before. However, Fong Ming didn't seem to have given up. The two were here to participate in the promotion of a summer blockbuster that the company was promoting this year. Fong Han and Ruan Qi weren't the main characters. Fong Han played the brother of the main character and was barely an important supporting role. As for Ruan Qi, she only appeared once. When the filming of the movie started, both of their schedules were very tight. The company asked them to spare some time just to use their reputation to promote the movie. It had to be said that the company's move was very successful. Many fans of the two were willing to spend dozens of yuan to buy a movie ticket just to see their idols in action. Why? I'm the main character. Those two dressing rooms are my favorite. Why did you give them to someone else? As soon as the two of them reached the dressing room, they heard the voice complaining. Next, a voice that sounded like an agent was advising her. My lady, what are Ruan Qi and Fong Ming's positions? Just bear with it for now. When you become more famous than the two of them, the best resources will naturally be yours. As the manager spoke, he opened the door as if he wanted to get something. When he saw Gu Xingyin and Fong Ming standing at the door with a faint smile, his face froze. He forced a smile and said, Sister Ruan and Brother Fong are here? Are you here to get styled for the press conference? He quickly stood aside and made way for the two of them. The two of them didn't speak. Chun Rong, who had been following behind them, slowly said, It's the company's rules which artists use which level of equipment. If Miss Lin has any objections, you can reflect to the company. Then, without even looking at the manager's extremely ugly expression, he walked in leisurely. Chapter 125. Gu Xingyin had a good impression of Lin Baihe. She came from a good family. This time, she was able to act in this movie because of her good looks and acting skills. The most important reason was that her father, who spoiled his daughter, spent a lot of money on the crew. It just so happened that several famous artists in Star Entertainment couldn't spare the time, so the role was given to her. At this moment, her agent was probably very anxious. In the original plot, Lin Baihe didn't develop well. She had a bad temper and was arrogant. Because she ridiculed Ming Shujia, the latter hated her. After Ming Shujia became famous, she didn't forget to suppress her. Lin Baihe had always been a mediocre artist in the entertainment circle. Sure enough, when Gu Xingyin went back, Lin Baihe's agent took her to apologize to Ruan Qi. Sister Ruan, I'm really sorry. Baihe is young and ignorant. She offended the senior and apologizes to you. Lin Baihe, who was standing behind him, stepped forward and bowed at Gu Xingyin, apologizing in a low voice. Gu Xingyin saw that her eyes were red. She must have been scolded by her agent. She waved her hand. In this entertainment circle, it's better to keep your mouth shut. After Gu Xingyin walked away, the agent glared at Lin Baihe. Fortunately, it's Sister Ruan today. If it's someone with a bad temper, you won't be able to survive in Star Entertainment. When Gu Xingyin went downstairs, she unexpectedly saw Ming Shujia. She was walking into the elevator with several young actresses. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. She remembered that Ming Shujia wasn't an artist in Star Entertainment. What was going on? Ming Shujia was here to sign a contract. She used to be in a small, unknown company. There weren't any famous celebrities, and she didn't have a powerful agent. Ming Shujia knew that it was better to lean on a big tree. Star Entertainment had a big background and resources. Although there were many artists and competition was fierce, she was confident that she could stand out. Gu Xingyin was surprised when he learned that Ming Shujia had successfully signed a contract with Star Entertainment. She was a 24-year-old female artist who was still a B-lister and had such rumors about her. She was even able to sign a contract with Star Entertainment, which had always been strict. Ming Shujia was not a simple woman. However, this is more interesting, isn't it? Gu Xingyin smiled slowly. The stronger the opponent, the greater the sense of achievement when he could trample her under his feet. Gu Xingyin was in a cafe with not many people, so she did not know that she had been recognized by a fan, and that her smile had been photographed. A certain forum suddenly exploded. Opie was bored and came out for a cup of coffee. I didn't expect to be so lucky to meet Her Majesty the Queen. He even secretly took a photo. My HP bar is empty, and I'm already kneeling under Her Majesty the Queen's skirt. Let's cut to the chase. Take the picture. On the sofa on the second floor, Her Majesty the Queen's looks are off the charts. That devilish smile is so mesmerizing. Desktop has been changed. Mommy asked me why the screen is so clean. Looking at the decorations around, I can already guess where this place is. Damn, the OP is a tycoon. Upstairs, don't go. Where is this place? I want to form a group and fight Her Majesty the Queen. Upstairs +1. Oh my god, I'm turning gay. Why are you so handsome, Her Majesty the Queen? Her Majesty the Queen is my husband. If you don't agree, let's fight. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Chapter 126. When Gu Xingyin arrived at the restaurant, she saw Ludwig looking at something on his phone. Her eyes were sharp, and she immediately saw herself on the screen. Looking at the background, she must have been secretly photographed in the cafe earlier. When Ludwig saw her, he didn't have the slightest intention of restraining himself. He saved the photo in the album right in front of her. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Ludwig smiled and said, "It's beautiful." Gu Xingyin said, "Thank you." Ludwig moved the menu in front of her. "What would you like to eat?" Seeing her look around, he smiled considerately. "I heard Miss Song recommend it. She said it's very safe here, and we don't have to worry about being photographed by the paparazzi." After Gu Xingyin ordered the dishes, the waiter who had been waiting by the side quickly took the food and left. Ludwig was pouring wine for Gu Xingyin. His slender and fair fingers gripped the goblet, and the translucent red wine reflected in it was exceptionally beautiful. Gu Xingyin was dazed. This man's every move was full of indescribable charm. Wine for the beauty. Ludwig raised the wine glass in his hand. Gu Xingyin took a sip and praised, "You speak Z country well." Ludwig smiled. "My grandmother is Z country. I like Z country very much." The food was quickly served. Gu Xingyin ate slowly and elegantly. Ludwig looked at her the whole time. His gaze was too intense, and Gu Xingyin couldn't ignore it. She put down the cutlery in her hand. "Mr. Gardner." Ludwig interrupted her. "Call me Ludwig." Gu Xingyin said, "Okay, Ludwig. Is there something wrong with my makeup today?" Ludwig smiled and said, "No, you're very beautiful today." Gu Xingyin asked, "Then why are you staring at me?" Ludwig smiled brightly. "It's because Ki is good-looking. There's an old saying in Z country that a beauty is a feast for the eyes. I plan to give it a try and see if it's true." Gu Xingyin. Okay, he was sure that Ludwig was making fun of him. But she couldn't get angry because of this. That would be too ungentlemanly. Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and said to Ludwig, "Ludwig, if you continue like this, you might not feel hungry, but the lady opposite you will be so embarrassed that she won't be able to eat." Ludwig blinked, his blue eyes full of sincerity. Why? Gu Xingyin gritted her teeth in her heart, but she still had a perfect smile on her face. "Because being stared at by such a handsome man like you, no woman can concentrate." How come she never knew that Ludwig was so shameless? Oh, then I know. Ludwig seemed to understand something. "Ki, you like my face," he said with certainty. Gu Xingyin had never seen such a shameless person. She smiled and gritted her teeth. Everyone loves beauty. Ludwig suddenly understood. He suddenly smiled brightly and said to Gu Xingyin, "So Ki, let's go out?" Gu Xingyin. "Wait. What kind of development is this?" Ludwig continued, "Look. You like my face, which means you have a good impression of me. And it just so happens that I like you very much. So let's go out." Gu Xingyin calmly interrupted him. "If I remember correctly, we've only met once. This is the second time we've met." No. Ludwig refuted her very seriously. In fact, this is the third time we've met. The first time we met was at the airport. You were with Miss Song. He looked at Gu Xingyin and said affectionately, Miss Wan Kui, I fell in love with you at first sight. Chapter 127. At the Tsinghua Fashion Week press conference. Country Z's Tsinghua City was known as the world's fashion capital. Every designer dreamed of attending Tsinghua Fashion Week. Similarly, Tsinghua Fashion Week was also one of the most popular places for supermodels. Gu Xingyin arrived at the destination early. Although the supermodels looked so glamorous on the runway, they were not so relaxed backstage. Ali, help me button up. Zhang Qiao, your eye makeup is not done yet. Gu Xingyin only needed to walk one show and did not need to change clothes frequently. Moreover, Song Sisi was not a famous designer. Her works were displayed in the backstage, so she did not need to be in a hurry. Gu Xingyin slowly walked through the crowd. A few familiar faces recognized her and were surprised, but they just nodded and smiled. They did not have the time to catch up. After walking out of the fitting room, Gu Xingyin walked towards the bathroom. Host, be careful. The system suddenly said. Gu Xingyin was thinking about other things and did not react for a moment. Someone walked over in a hurry and did not notice Gu Xingyin at all. Yes. Gu Xingyin groaned. There was a wall behind her. She was knocked back 2 steps and leaned against the wall to avoid the fate of falling. The other model also took a few steps back. Cecilia raised her head and glanced at Gu Xingyin. She confirmed that she had never seen this face before. At this time, the person who could appear here must be a model. However, she had never seen her before. Obviously, the other party was not a famous model. Cecilia looked at Gu Xingyin again. The latter's figure and face made her feel a sense of crisis. She raised her head reservedly and looked at Gu Xingyin. She preemptively said, Don't you look in front of you when you walk. I will be representing Pull in the show soon. If I fall and affect my performance, can you bear the responsibility? To be honest, Gu Xingyin hadn't experienced being questioned like this for a long time. No matter if it was her or Wan Qi's body. She glanced at the model and found her vaguely familiar. At this moment the system spoke, Cecilia, Spanish professional model. So it was her. She was supposed to be the model for Song Sisi's fashion show. At this time, Cecilia was not yet the top supermodel she would be in the future. She was just a little famous. Gu Xingyin glanced at her and said, If my memory serves me right, Miss Cecilia was the one who bumped into me. Cecilia was surprised that the other party knew her name. Soon after, she proudly thought that her reputation had spread far and wide. Thinking of this, she was in a very good mood. She didn't intend to trouble Gu Xingyin anymore. She rolled her eyes at her and impatiently walked past Gu Xingyin to leave. Originally, this matter should have ended like this. However, when Cecilia passed by Gu Xingyin, the former said a very clear sentence in Gu Xingyin's ear. Bitch of Z country. Gu Xingyin's face suddenly turned cold. Her voice was extremely cold. Stop. Cecilia originally intended to ignore her, but an inexplicable feeling from the other party made her stop. Wan Qi's height was about the same as Cecilia's, but Cecilia felt like she was a rabbit facing a cheetah when she saw Wan Qi's aura. This was the aura of a top supermodel. The other party was just an unknown model. How could she have such an aura? Cecilia was in a cold sweat. Chapter 128. Gu Xingyin looked at her coldly. Miss Cecilia, please apologize to me for what you said just now. This was a public area. There were so many models backstage. It was impossible that no one had seen what had just happened. However, no one stepped forward. It was obvious that they were just watching. Wan Qi had a good temper, but it didn't mean that she didn't have a temper. If she let Cecilia go today, she would probably be ridiculed to death in tomorrow's news. Cecilia wanted to roll her eyes and arrogantly say, Who do you think you are? Or just leave. But when she met the other party's dark eyes, she couldn't help but feel afraid. She knew very well that she was completely suppressed by the other party. The longer this went on, the worse it would be for her. Cecilia knew this, but she couldn't apologize to such a woman. She didn't know where the courage came from. She suddenly rushed towards Gu Xingyin and pushed her hard. The system had already warned Gu Xingyin when it noticed that something was wrong with Cecilia. So this time, Gu Xingyin took a few steps back. She was ready to fall. Based on Cecilia's strength, she would definitely fall to the ground. However, Gu Xingyin, who was prepared by the system, could completely avoid the fall. But she didn't plan to avoid it. If she really fell down today, she could guarantee that Cecilia would be kicked out of country Z with her tail between her legs the next day. Did she really think that she, Gu Xingyin, was so easy to take advantage of? But her plan couldn't keep up with the changes. A pair of arms caught her firmly. It was Ludwig. At the same time, Gu Xingyin smelled the familiar lotus fragrance on him. It was actually him. Gu Xingyin suddenly felt a little stuffy. She glared fiercely at Ludwig in a hidden corner. Ludwig thought that Gu Xingyin was still angry about what had happened. He touched his nose, but his hand didn't let go of Gu Xingyin's waist. Turning to Cecilia, who was stunned by this development, Ludwig's face instantly turned cold. "Do you have a problem with my partner?" Cecilia was really panicking this time. Who was Ludwig? She didn't know Wan Kai, but she definitely knew Ludwig. His Majesty the King of the supermodel world. Not only that, the Gardner family had been in Western Europe for hundreds of years. Whether it was the financial street or the fashion industry, they had a great influence. She almost didn't think about it. She bowed deeply to Gu Xingyin. "I'm sorry, miss. I apologize for my behavior just now." However, Gu Xingyin only glanced at Ludwig. "My hand hurts." Ludwig immediately tensed up. "Where? Let me see." He didn't even look at Cecilia, who was standing there with a pale face. He helped Gu Xingyin to a lounge. Gu Xingyin knew that this was a private lounge as soon as she entered. She glanced at Ludwig and had a new estimation of his influence. A person who could have an independent lounge at Tsinghua Fashion Week was definitely not as simple as a supermodel. It seemed that every time her lover was reincarnated, he was treated better than her, the protagonist. Gu Xingyin was deep in thought. At this time, the system chose to play dead. Chapter 129. Where are you hurt? Ludwig's words interrupted her thoughts. Gu Xingyin just didn't want to talk to Cecilia, so she made up a random excuse. But when he asked, she really did feel a dull pain in her right elbow. She raised her arm, and sure enough, her elbow was bruised. Wan Qi's skin was very white and delicate. The bruise looked very scary. Sure enough, Ludwig's face fell. In his heart, Cecilia's modeling career had been sentenced to death. But he didn't say anything. He just turned around and took a bottle of medicine, carefully applying it on Gu Xingyin. "Be gentle, it hurts." Gu Xingyin glared at him. Knowing that he was her lover, Gu Xingyin wasn't so polite to him. Ludwig was very happy. He always felt that the woman in front of him was wearing a mask when she treated him. Now she was the real her. A cool feeling came from the place where the medicine was applied, effectively relieving the pain. Looking at Gu Xingyin's relaxed expression, Ludwig suddenly leaned forward and asked, "You're not angry anymore, right?" "Back to 2 days ago." Ludwig looked at Gu Xingyin and said seriously, "Don't worry. Miss Wan Qi, I fell in love with you at first sight." Gu Xingyin was expressionless. "All love at first sight is just hooliganism." "Ludwig? Question mark. Gu Xingyin. Do you think I'm beautiful?" Ludwig didn't understand and nodded. Gu Xingyin. Do you have a good impression of me when you see me? Ludwig still didn't understand and nodded again. Gu Xingyin spread her hands. "See, your so-called love at first sight is just because of my face." Ludwig felt that something was wrong, but he didn't know how to refute. At this moment, Gu Xingyin's eyes suddenly lit up as she looked in a certain direction. "Do you think that Persian cat is pretty?" Ludwig didn't like these little things, but seeing that Gu Xingyin liked them so much, he nodded. Gu Xingyin turned her head and smiled brightly. "Then go and buy it. Fall in love with it at first sight." After he finished speaking, he picked up his bag and left in one go. The time reversal was complete. Gu Xingyin saw the nervousness hidden deep in the man's eyes. She laughed inwardly and shook her head. Ludwig breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at Gu Xingyin again. "What about my confession?" Westerners were just that straightforward. Although Gu Xingyin knew that he was her lover, she did not intend to let him go so easily. Ludwig, I don't think we're suitable. She sighed. The man was clearly hurt. Why? Gu Xingyin's answer was simple. I don't have any feelings for you. Ludwig did not give up. As far as I know, you don't have a lover. Since that's the case, why won't you give me a chance? Gu Xingyin was unmoved. Ludwig, some things can't be forced. Feelings aren't something you can have just because you want to. She looked at the man with a sincere gaze. Look, you're so handsome and rich. There are so many girls who like you. And there are many who are more outstanding than me. Why don't you consider them? The system, who had been secretly watching, thought. The spicy host is getting worse and worse. I feel sorry for Ludwig. Ludwig suddenly looked at Gu Xingyin and smiled. You're right. Feelings can't be forced. There are so many girls, but I only have feelings for you. He did not give Gu Xingyin time to react. He leaned over and covered her mouth. After the kiss, he looked at the dizzy Gu Xingyin. Now do you have feelings for me? Chapter 130. Mei Luan sat in the guest seat and frowned at the models on the stage. To be honest, the quality of the Tsinghua Fashion Week was not bad, but there were no eye-catching works. The old luxury brands continued with their usual style, and there were no breakthroughs or innovations. He was a professional reviewer, but this time he didn't have the desire to write. He thought that this would be the end of the fashion week. At most, he would look forward to the last design until he saw the female model appear. The crowd suddenly quieted down, and then there was the sound of shutters. Gu Xingyin walked out in her ice domain. Under the stage lights, she really looked like the ice queen who had descended from the mysterious ice goddess temple. She wore a crown woven from snow and held a scepter carved from ice. Step by step, she walked into the human world. From far to near, it was like a dream. Her clothes were very cold and luxurious, but she was even colder and more noble. It seemed that the whole venue was cold, because of her appearance. It was the end of summer, but some people could not help but wrap their arms around her. Mei Luan did not even want to blink. He was afraid of missing any details. When Gu Xingyin turned around and disappeared behind the scenes, he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. He knew who the model was. Ruan Kui, the favorite of the modeling industry 4 years ago. Later, she turned to film and television. He did not expect that after 4 years, she would appear on the runway again. Mei Luan thought that he knew what to write for this week's review. Mei Luan, who was already satisfied, did not know that there was a bigger surprise waiting for him. This time, the shutters were pressed more urgently, as if the photographers could not wait to use up all the film in a few seconds. There was only one person who could be so favored by them, Ludwig Gardner. Mei Luan felt that his eyes were not enough. It was obvious that Ludwig's clothes were the same as Ruan Kui's, but they were dressed in different styles. Ruan Kui was the empress, so she was arrogant, cold, disdainful, and insufferably noble. On the other hand, Ludwig was a knight. He was handsome, loyal, and powerful. He only had one person in his eyes. The atmosphere at the scene had reached a climax, especially for the media. They had already written the headlines for tomorrow. Melon knew that there was still a big show waiting for him. Sure enough, the empress, who had left the stage earlier, walked up to the stage with her knight. There was no doubt that Ludwig was the #1 male supermodel. When he fully unleashed his aura, he could almost suppress most people. Today, everyone could see that Ludwig was in his best condition. But even so, Gu Xingyin, who stood beside him, was not inferior at all. No one could ignore her standing beside Ludwig. This was Her Majesty. The photographers were suddenly glad that they had not used up all their film. Otherwise, they would have nowhere to cry. At this moment, Ludwig suddenly made an unexpected move. When he walked to the front of the stage, he suddenly turned around, knelt on one knee, took Gu Xingyin's hand, and kissed it gently. Your knight will always be loyal to you, Your Majesty the Empress. This scene had already made many people scream in a low voice. Her Majesty lowered her head, looked at the knight, and smiled slightly. I allow you to offer your loyalty, my knight. You belong to me only. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.